Hey everyone, Espero here and welcome back to my channel. The newest Halloween banner just went live this week, and as always, that means we've got a new Tempest Trial unit that we get to keep for free. Ina. She is a Tellius unit that I did not expect to receive anytime soon, if at all, and she does play a pretty important role throughout the plot of Path of Radiance, so it's really cool to see her in FEH. Perhaps this could hint at some new Tellius units sprinkled throughout the oncoming banners, maybe? Also interesting to note is that Ina is the first Tempest Trial Dragon unit that we've ever gotten. We've had Kana and Garen in the Grail Shop as Grand Hero Battle units, but this will be the first time we get a Dragon unit from a Tempest Trial event, which is kind of fun. Ina is of course making her debut into FEH as an Infantry Red Breath unit. At 5 stars level 40, her neutral stats read as HP 44, Attack 36, Speed 23, Defense 37, and Resistance 36. Please note that should you decide to invest any trait fruit into her, Ina does have a super boon in speed, which could actually come in handy if anyone decides to try to salvage her speed, something that could certainly be done, but I'd only recommend doing so at max merges, since her base speed is quite low and therefore she's going to require some high investment in order to really get that speed up. As far as the rest of her stats go, she's got some really excellent bulk. 44 HP is solid, and with 37 defense and 36 resistance, she's immediately a great candidate for disencounter. Her attack stat is also pretty solid at 36. With some units boasting upwards of 45 base attack nowadays, I can't really say that 36 is excellent anymore, but it's definitely still very much workable and she'll definitely still be able to pack a punch. Honestly, she's got a pretty solid stat spread, all things considered. She is infantry, so her stats aren't anywhere nearly juiced up as Jigensi, who's an armored unit, but they're still very formidable. And for any new players who might be trying to build up their barracks, getting Ina as a free dragon unit is still incredibly refreshing. As for her base kit, Ina's got some decent stuff to play with. In her weapon slot, she comes with Pale Breath Plus, which has 14 might. For its effect, it grants her attack and defense +5 in combat so long as she is within 2 spaces of an ally. It also has the added effect of neutralizing any debuffs on her to these 2 respective stats. And yes, if you're wondering why this weapon description sounds familiar, that would be because it's almost identical to the Carrot Cudgel and Gilt Fork that we had gotten from Spring Bartra and Spring Narcian just this past March. Both the Cudgel and the Fork were really nice inheritable weapons, and it's nice that dragons are getting access to a new breath skill. I honestly can't remember the last time we got access to a new inheritable breath skill. And though a lot of dragons might prefer lightning breath because of the distant counter effect it's got, this is still a solid alternative for anyone wanting to keep their dragons close range while helping beef up their defense a little bit. Moving on, Ina also comes with Swap in her assist skill, which is fine. There's not much to say about this skill as she's an infantry unit, and so I'd much rather just replace it with Reposition. As for her B skill, she's got Defense and Resistance Link 3, which is already available on a Grail unit via Sigrun. With it, she gains +6 defense and resistance out of combat after using or being targeted by an assist skill, which is also fine. As I'm sure many of us are aware, visible buffs are in a very difficult spot right now since so many units run lull skills nowadays, or just other miscellaneous skills that negate visible buffs. They're getting harder and harder to run, but if you're planning on using her for PvE content, then this is still a solid budget option that'll provide her some additional mixed bulk. The last skill she comes with is War Dragons, which grants +4 defense and resistance to dragon allies within 2 spaces in combat. Considering that this skill was previously 5-star locked, it's actually quite refreshing to see it on a 4-star unit. I don't know how much value it'll offer since dragon emblem teams are pretty much extinct nowadays, but hey, it's here. Alright, and that is it for her base kit. Let's throw in some skills and see what we can do with her. On to build number 1. Alright, like I usually like to do with our Tempest Trial unit, our first build is a budget build that's likely best suited for any new players out there who might be looking to pad out their barracks, or just about anyone who might be low on resources. For that reason, we're going to keep her stats neutral, but for her weapon we're going to add in a Refine in defense to grant her an additional +4 to this stat. Jumping over to her B slot, we're going to plug in Quick Riposte 3, which grants Ina a follow-up attack on the enemy phase so long as she's above 70% HP. Unfortunately, because of her low speed, this is one of only 2 skills that will allow her to make a follow-up attack. And because Quick Riposte only functions in the enemy phase, it's going to affect our choice of A skill. For her A slot, I've decided on going for Warding Breath, an enemy phase skill that grants her +4 resistance and an additional special charge per enemy hit. Though it's only available on 1 unit, that 1 unit is a free unit that everyone has access to, Legendary Ike. And while he's a great unit to use when you're first starting out the game, his A skill can make for some pretty solid fodder for anyone later down the road that decides to bench him. Nowadays, it's still a solid skill for any units trying to build their special up faster. With how fast we'll be able to rack up special charges, I'm going to recommend using Soul in her special slot. Ether would be preferred, but if we're going for more budget friendly, Soul is more easily accessible for new players as it's available on more units, and it still gives us that self-sustain we need to stay within Quick Riposte range. If you are able to upgrade to Ether at some point, I would recommend it though, as the extra damage is really well appreciated. Since we've obviously got an enemy phase build going here, I'm going to recommend either Mirror Stance or Sturdy Stance for her A slot, which grants her attack +4 and then either +4 defense or resistance depending on which you choose. Since we're already getting some defense from her weapon and Weapon Refine, it might be nice to give her some additional res to be able to tank any other dragons and even soak up some magical damage. If you'd rather focus all in on her defense, however, Sturdy Stance 2 would be the preferred option. Okay, and that leaves us with our C skill. For this slot, I'm going to opt for Attack Smoke, which will debuff any surrounding allies within 2 spaces after combat. Smoke skills are especially nice for any units that love to tank through various hordes of enemies, as it'll continue to activate after each round of combat. It's certainly a cheap but highly effective way of weakening the enemy. Alright, and that is it for build number 1. It's a pretty solid budget-friendly option and it has a lot of potential to grow once you've got more access to skills. For our second build, however, let's see what we can do when we have access to more premium fodder. Let's go! Alright, our second build shouldn't come as a surprise, a Distant Counter build. It's what I imagine many players might consider given her stat spread. We are of course keeping her weapon as we welcome the increase to her attack and defense. This time around, I decided to go with a refine in resistance, however, since she already gained some defense from her weapon, so I figured this could help keep the stat distribution even. As mentioned, we are slapping Distant Counter into her A slot as she's got incredibly well balanced bulk, so she's definitely going to want this skill. I suppose you could also give her Distant Ward if you really wanted to, but considering how solid her defense is, I'd still recommend Distant Counter over it since she's got the bulk to tank through archers and daggers. In our B slot, I thought we could go really high investment and aim for Dragon's Ire 3, the newest dragon exclusive skill to be added thanks to Halloween Grima. I still can't believe she got an out, oh my gosh. We sort of touched base on this new skill in my previous reaction video to this banner, but we didn't go in too deep. Let me start off by saying that this skill completely power creeps Quick Riposte. It's an enemy phase skill that only requires you to be above 50% HP rather than 70. And aside from it granting you a follow-up attack, it also negates any skills that prevent your unit from performing said follow-up. So it's a better Quick Riposte with like half null follow-up thrown in there. The catch is that it's exclusive to dragon units who, as we know, are in a tight spot on account of how many dragon effective weapons there are in the game. Still, it's a really awesome skill, and though I don't know how high investment anyone would be willing to go for Ina, it's still a fantastic B skill for her. For her C slot, we've got some flexibility here. Since her weapons really want her to be within 2 spaces of an ally in order for its effect to activate, I thought that a joint drive skill made the most sense. Any joint drive skill could work, but seeing as how attack is the most accessible of the 3 we have available so far, we'll go with joint drive attack to grant her and her allies an additional +4 in combat. And lastly, this brings us over to her S skill, which is perhaps the most flexible. Since she is an enemy phase unit with Distant Counter, some options that immediately come to mind might be Distant Defense 3, Mirror Stance, or even Sturdy Stance as mentioned in our budget build. Depending on which stat ends up being the highest, you may want to opt for Bonfire or perhaps Iceberg in her special slot, both of which are 3 charge specials that could be quite good for her the higher you build up her bulk. Speaking of which, if for whatever reason you're against the idea of giving her Distant Counter, she can likely function very similarly to Idun, if you're willing to give her Fortress Defense and Resistance 3. Since she'll instead be close range, you've got plenty of other options for her Sacred Seal, like Close Defense or even Renewal, which could make taking her down much more difficult. Alright, and that is it for build number 2. This is what her stats look like at max merges. Interesting to note that both her defense and resistance end up at 41, which just goes to show how bulky she can be later down the road. The only downside is that at the time of this video, we still don't have any inheritable skills in the game that neutralize effectiveness against dragons. Of course, if we did, perhaps we might see a return of when dragons dominated the meta. I don't know, I kinda doubt it. But still, I'm surprised Intelligent Systems hasn't given it to us yet, so if you decide to build Ina, just watch out for anyone with dragon effectiveness. Alright, and that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. What do you guys think of Ina? Was anyone else surprised to see her as our free unit? Yes, I certainly was, and I kinda get the feeling that we might not even ever get regular Ina in the game. I don't know that she's popular enough, especially with how many more Telis units we've still got left, but who knows? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And as a reminder, I do stream Tuesday, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays over on Twitch. We do Rival Domain matches on weekends and play other games during the week like Pokemon, Mario Sunshine, and now apparently Genshin Impact. Feel free to drop by anytime. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and as always, happy saving, happy summoning, and take care.